Okay, thank you and welcome back. This is the second part of our viewing of the documentary. We are very, very honored and excited to have Karla Murthy, who is the director of the production. And I just wanted to share a little bit about who she is and her role. And then we're okay. So the plan is that I'm going to ask her and Julius questions about the process and some other questions. And then and if you all have questions, we ask that you put your questions into the chat, which we will refer to. Anyway, Karla Murthy is the director and producer, and she's an Emmy Award nominated producer. So she's just not any old producer. And she began her career working for the veteran journalist Bill Moyers, and has been a producer, camera person, and correspondent for various PBS News magazines over the last 15 years. Her work was cited by the Columbia Journalism Review as compelling, informative, and compassionate, and we certainly saw that today. Karla is of Filipino and South Asian descent. She graduated from Oberlin College, so that makes her a homegirl, right? And is an alum of the Third World Newsreel Workshop for the Documentary Institution at Antioch College, also in Ohio. Yay, good, Karla. And then I wanted to tell you a little bit about Councilman Julius Oliver. He was heavily featured in the documentary. He is the first ward councilman for the city of Youngstown, Ohio, and as a resident of the city, he has lived here. He has had a life of service, not in leadership. And as a teenager, he volunteered with his church, and upon graduation, he joined the United States Army. In 2016, I believe you ran for office the first time. And he's done a lot of amazing things over his lifetime as well. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of sketching over because, well, never mind, that's not important why. It's just my issue. So anyway, bravo. So I just wanted to start off by saying that when I've watched the documentary a couple of times, okay? And the first time I watched it, I had this really, really sense of pathos, and I felt overwhelmed, and I felt just not well, not really good, and and all this and that. But the second time I watched it, I saw the hope and the energy and the commitment and the determination. So Karla, would you like to talk about that, please? About these different things that I'm seeing? Like there was faith, and there was wealth, there was poverty, there was hopelessness, there was housing, and there was vibrancy, and then there wasn't any vibrancy. So please talk to us a little bit about the process, how the film came about.
Sure. So this film grew out of reporting that I did for PBS NewsHour, where I usually work at. And so I had been sent to do a piece in 2016, just a short news piece. And that's when I first met Ian and Tiffany and saw some of the work that YNDC was doing. And that's sort of when I got the idea that, it'd be really great to turn this into a longer film to really see what change looks like on the ground over time. And, and the original idea was like, wouldn't it be great to see one of these houses change over time and get to see it be a family, a home for a family again. So that was sort of the idea that I had. And then also because when I do news pieces, I often have to kind of reduce people to just one soundbite and just one angle, and that's it. Like I don't get to delve into their lives at all. And so this was an opportunity to do something totally different and really show the people who are behind this work and to show their lives unfold over time. And to me, that kind of changes people's perceptions of these places more than anything, is to show, our commonalities and to show these moments in people's lives, and that people live in these towns and are really trying really hard to change them from the genesis of the film.
Okay. Councilman Oliver, you were heavily featured in the documentary, and I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of missed the connect that you were the city council person as well, because you were really like a community person. You were on the ground, you were engaged with, oh, are you in your car? Hi. You were just directly engaged with the community and down to earth. You know, you weren't suited up or anything like that. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, I recently interviewed the school superintendent of Columbus City Schools for a piece of a newspaper that I work for. And she described the school as the hub of a community. And when the community is vibrant, it is the go-to place. And in the film, you talked about wanting to, I guess, resurrect the community high school. Can you talk a little bit about that and where you're at with it right now in that process?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Yeah, the process came about with South High School being one of the most loved high schools with one of the biggest alumni that our cities have. You know, it's South High School. Everybody calls themselves a South High School warrior. Both my parents went to South High School, so I heard the stories all the time about my dad being best dressed and, you know what I mean, all the different variety shows we went to as a kid at South Fieldhouse. So it basically came out of a understanding of how connected the community was with that establishment and trying to bring that back in order to bring back an entire neighborhood, basically be the catalyst for change for an entire area. And right now, it was a dip for a while with the change in the administration on getting support to actually get that off the ground. But now there is a push from an organization that is led by a man from Youngstown who has become very successful in Atlanta and now wants to come back and give back to the community. So they're in the process of getting South Fieldhouse from the city, purchasing the school in front and totally revitalizing it, new track, new bleachers, totally redoing the field house and making it accessible to the community. There's another local millionaire who actually played for the NFL, who was also interested and already committed to putting $5 million towards the project. So it's moving along now.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because in the film you were talking about a GoFundMe that had just a little bit over $200, and I started to feel this sense of being overwhelmed because that's like starting from nothing. So I'm glad to hear that that project is moving along. Karla, you might have touched on this a little bit in your last response to my first question, but tell us why you wanted to make the film.
I think for me, it was really to show the human aspect and to show the lives of people who are doing this work. And to show the rest of the country. I mean, I think a lot of people outside of, you know, the Midwest have a different perception of what Ohio was like and what these towns are like. And I really wanted to change that perception and that narrative, especially out of the 2016 election. There was a very predominant narrative about what was going on there. And, you know, and there was a sense of kind of hopelessness that I think came out of that election as well. And so for me, it was really to show a different side of this area and to show the vibrancy and to show the dedication and the resilience and people who are working to change things. And also to kind of show that change isn't always these, you know, we tend to highlight in the news these big movements of change. And here I really wanted to validate and lift up the idea of, you know, being able to change one street or one house or, you know, one field house, and to kind of show that all those efforts together can be really meaningful. So yeah, those were some of the reasons why I wanted to make this film.
I'm glad you mentioned change, because change is one of the themes that I saw in the documentary. And for me, it was like change happens one brick at a time and one hope at a time. And then Tiffany said there is beauty everywhere that people tend to ignore. Julius, tell us what that means to you when you think about Youngstown, your home where you grew up in it. And I'm really thinking about when you were, I think it was in your former backyard. and you were talking, you were also playing the role of dog whisperer. I was really impressed by that. I think I would have said, stop filming and ran off screaming, but go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Well, I think with Tiffany, well, my interpretation of what Tiffany said, when she said there's beauty everywhere is, Youngstown is a wonderful place. We definitely have our problems, but we have a metro park that's only second to Central Park in New York. And they were actually built by the same person, Mill Creek Park. It's like, when you have assets like that in a city, people tend to forget about the beauty. They forget about, Fellows Riverside Garden, and they forget about, how many great things are in our city. And, even when you find places where, a house may be, abandoned and dilapidated and fallen down, you just got to look at the neighborhood around it and consider, we just need to put another house here. When she said there's beauty everywhere, when it comes to mind, me coming down Woodland Street, the street I grew up on, and just happened to stop in front of this dilapidated, horrible piece of property where there's tires everywhere, broken bottles, there's trees growing up through houses' foundation. But then I look around and I'm like, oh my goodness, this elevation is great. This actually overlooks the downtown. I'm gonna build a house here because I'm looking beyond what's actually there, and I'm looking towards the beauty that's kind of unseen that Tiffany was talking about. And right now, we're 7 weeks out from moving into our new house that we built on a piece of property that nobody wanted because they thought it was ugly, they thought it was trash. And that's what Youngstown is like. If you can just scrape away some of the dirt, scrape away some of the debris, and really get a chance to look, it's a treasure. And it takes certain eyes to be able to see that. And that's what I think she meant by it. You just got to look beyond the trash and be able to see your vision,
Yeah, I saw that because when the camera followed her into the house, that was that kind of like what you just described, and it would have been abandoned, and then there was some I guess some squatter action going on and everything, and she was kind of describing it, and the camera was panning the rooms and stuff, and then she said there's human feces in the toilet, which meant it wasn't flushed. Well, Karla, this question's for you. What did you feel as the filmmaker following her through that process? Because I'm thinking, I'm out of here. That would have been my first response. I'm out of here. What motivated you to continue?
To me, those homes are so symbolic of what a lot of cities, post-industrial cities, have gone through. And for me, it was heartbreaking because, someone lived in this house and then couldn't afford to keep it up for whatever reason and had to leave all of those belongings and picture. I mean, it was, and you see those remnants of, I like to say it's like these remnants of love and remnants of loss. And so, I really wanted to show that, and to show how painful, like what people are going through, But also I knew that YNDC was going to renovate this house, and who doesn't love a really great renovation and a good reveal at the end, so that was one of the reasons why I knew I wanted to stay. And we got really lucky because, we filmed a few different houses. And then we met Bernie along the way, Bernadette, and she wanted a completely different house that we hadn't been filming. And we completely lucked out that the house she ended up getting was one of the main houses that we followed. So, and that was just an amazing thing to be able to see at the very end is, her and her son living in that house. I mean, that was what we always envisioned would be the end, but we weren't sure we were going to get it, but we got that. So, yeah, I think it was, we wanted to show the transformation, and we wanted to show the reality of like, this is someone's house that, you could be living right next door to, and this is what's going on. So, yeah.
You did that really well, because I can't remember which house you were in. It might've been that one when you were panning the room and you saw this organ sitting in the room, and that's an expensive instrument. And that said that whoever lived in this house was talented. They were musical, they were cultured, and then they were gone. Julius, one of the neighbors, I forgot her name, was talking about how this house is abandoned, this house is boarded up, this house has been, can you, that kind of plays into that. What was it like seeing your neighbors and your neighborhoods just kind of like disappear?
It's really disheartening and it's really sad. You know what I mean? You know, especially, you know, being able to walk down the street or in a process of a film and a documentary. It's just, you know, being able to see where your friends used to live next door, or, you know what I mean? For me, as a Black man, when we moved from where we lived down the hill up to the nicer neighborhood, it's like, you know, well, the first white people we met was, you know, Mr. Richardson that lived next door to us on Hudson, and standing there in our lot where we used to live and just thinking about, you know, I wonder where Miss Richardson is now. You know, I know Mr. Richardson died some years ago, but, you know, those are the kind of thoughts that you get. And you just think of, like Karla said, all the memories of families past, all of the fun we used to have in the neighborhood as kids. And then you come through as an adult and your neighborhood is leveled. It's not there anymore. Our house is barely hanging on, or, you know, your friend Charles' house up the street is on the demolition list. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's sad. And you see and understand how people get to a point in the city like Youngstown where they start to give up. And that's why I'm very happy that this film highlighted, you know, a lot of the great things, because what it's done is it's changed people's mindset to say, okay, now I see the beauty and now I want to get involved and be able to do something. But it's just a matter of, you know, what do we give people to do at this point?
Okay. Karla, I understand that you started filming the week of the inauguration. I think that was the 2016 inauguration. Can you talk more about how you dealt with the political landscape in the film? I know there were some references, but I'd like to hear it from your perspective.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we weren't sure exactly how much it was going to come up in the film as we were filming. We started filming January 2017. But we knew we wanted it to kind of bubble up from time to time in the film. And one of the reasons why is because Youngstown for decades, and this isn't something that I have written about, but other people, journalists from Youngstown have also talked about this, but that there's this phenomenon that every election cycle, all the politicians come and they give their speeches in front of an abandoned steel mill and their ideas about what's going to change things. And then they walk away, they leave. And so I wanted to acknowledge that's what happens, and that places like Youngstown get used in that way. I didn't really want to pick sides, but I wanted to show that is something that happens, and that even journalists like myself, and you would see like a journalist there interviewing the mayor at the time, you know, come in, parachute in and do these stories talking about the blight and talking about the politicians, and then we also leave. And so I wanted to have that moment to give viewers a sense of the context that places like Youngstown exist in the political landscape. And then to kind of reverse that and say, okay, well, despite whatever those promises that are being made and often, you know, not kept, what are people doing on the ground for themselves and their communities, and to really shed light on those efforts. So that was sort of the thinking behind that kind of one moment where we see the reporter and Trump in that. And then also just going back to what, you know, Julius was saying too, and just like inspiring people to want to do something in their own neighborhoods. For me, filming the clean out of Pineview was one of those moments, like when even just filming it and being in that much energy with all of those people, I was kind of just standing there while my DP was filming. And I was like, I have to do something too. Like, I can't just stand here and do nothing. And so in a different house that we were also filming a clean out, I like hid in the basement and started helping out. And that feeling that I had is what I want like other people to get when they watch this film. Like, what can I do? Like, what, you know, I want to get involved. I want to get my hands dirty. Yeah.
That's a really good answer. It reminded me of some filmmakers who actually put themselves in their films as like a signature piece, you know. But anyway, you decided to go in the basement and work off camera, which is, you know, that's really, really commendable. So as I stated earlier, there's a lot of themes just playing. I mean, there was just themes on top of themes on top of themes on top of themes. And one of them was when Tiffany started talking about her faith and how that worked for her. And but then it's almost like she felt, it's almost like she kind of settled too and said, well, I'm here now and I'm going to make a difference. And I think that came through as well. And so Julius, did you have that same kind of moment where you kind of like, I know you were in the Army for a while. What made you come back and to Youngstown, knowing presumably that you were coming to a community that was no longer as vibrant as it used to be?
Well, for me, Youngstown has always been what it is. I never lived in a Youngstown where it was thriving or booming or anything like that. I was born in the 80s, so steel mills were already closed, crack epidemic had just hit, and we grew up basically in the war zone no matter where we lived. So, coming back to Youngstown was like, I just wanted to be part of the solution because I had spent so many years from 13 to 23 being a part of the problem. So I knew what needed to be fixed. I knew what needed to be handled. And I wanted to be a part of, whoever was going to make things right for Youngstown because I love my city. No matter where I go in the country or in the world, I do not feel comfortable until I'm back in Youngstown. Youngstown is home. I love Youngstown. I love Youngstown's people. And I just understand that their mindset needs to change, because Youngstown has been down so long that, sometimes people in Youngstown can't even comprehend what's good. You can't even comprehend what leadership is because you haven't seen it in so long, So it's just a matter of showing people what needs to happen, having somebody to follow, offering those solutions, and just jumping in there. And that's what I wanted to be able to do for the people of Youngstown, be a part of the solution.
Okay. Karla, this is your first feature film. Well, tell us what the challenges were and can you elaborate a little bit more on how you approached the project?
Some of the main challenges, was just funding. I mean, just getting something like this funded is always very difficult. And there's so many amazing other documentary filmmakers out there. But and then, it was a lot of trips back and forth. We went to Youngstown. So we started in filming in 2017 and then filmed, I think our last shoot, we filmed over the course of 3 years. Most of the filming was done in 2017. And so unlike a news piece, I kind of know when I'm going in, even before I even get to where I'm going, what the story is going to be. I know kind of what everyone's going to say. I've pre-interviewed everyone. With the film, it's very different because it was hard to know when to stop filming. It was hard to know when a story was complete because these are people's lives. Like life just goes on. And so you kind of have to mold it into some kind of narrative. But I was also really inspired by another film that was done in Ohio, and it's a zip code, which I can't remember the zip code number, but it was this beautiful film that was sort of this montage of, vignettes of people's lives. And it was just kind of woven together. And it was kind of like it was more experimental. And I really loved that idea of just kind of weaving in these people's lives to create a tapestry of what this town feels like. I mean, some people have told me when they've watched the film that they feel like they've been there and they've heard what the streets sound like. And so I was really drawn to that in terms of form, in terms of how to tell the story and weave in everyone's stories and not have it be like this huge dramatic, arc, but have it be this kind of quiet film that I think is just more realistic to how life is in general. But so that was sort of the approach to how I edited and put the film together. I mean, we were dealing with over 150 hours of footage that we had to then cut down into 70 minutes. So it was a huge challenge. But yeah, so those were some of the approaches that I took. And Yeah, I mean, and one of the hardest parts was that we finished during the pandemic. And so, we had to release the film virtually. And so that was really hard. And we only had our first in-person screening where I got to see the film with Julius and Jasmine and their baby son,
Oh, okay.
their newborn son, and Krista and Ian and Tiffany all came out to New York City. And it was the first time I got to watch the film with them. And it was the most gratifying. I mean, it finally felt full circle. It was just really great to see the film with them.
Okay, listen, I just wanted to remind those of you who are viewing this that there is a chat box where if you have a question, you can drop your question in the chat. And we have 5 minutes left, so this is like last call for questions. But I wanted to circle back to you, Julius. You talked about changing people's mindsets, and in my opinion, that is the hardest thing to do. How do you do that?
I think you do it just like the military. When I went to the military, I never played sports. I mean, I went to practice, but people kept spitting in the grass and I didn't want to get tackled on spit, so I quit. But when I went to the military, I'm thinking, I'm this kid from Youngstown, I never played sports. I got to run a mile in less than 6 minutes. I got to do push-ups and sit-ups. I'm like, how am I going to get through this? But the drill sergeants, on top of, like really pushing you hard, they led by example. They showed you that you can do this. It's like, okay, well, here's one. Okay, let's go to 5 push-ups. Okay, let's go to 10 push-ups. And they don't sound like that. They yelling at you, but they still like encouraging you and showing you that it's in you. So I take the same approach. Our drill sergeants had a patch that said, basically it said, follow me on it. It showed a man waving his hand like, follow me. So everything we did, we followed the leadership of our drill sergeants, which got us to become soldiers in the United States Army. And no matter if you was, a guy like me that never played sports, or you was the toughest athlete out there, they got you to the point where you got to be no longer a civilian, but a soldier. So it's the same mindset when it comes to Youngstown. I'm an ex-street dude who went to the Army, came back home, opened a business, became successful, and then got elected to office, got married, had a son, built a house. And it's like, okay, all of these things are something that I'm not supposed to be able to achieve as a young Black man from Youngstown. I'm supposed to be in jail or dead. Matter of fact, my teachers told me in 3rd grade I'd be dead or in jail before I was 21. And I went to jail a couple of times. It was a couple of attempts on my life, but I'm still here. So what I do is I lead by example, and I show people, no matter what anybody says about us here in Youngstown, this is what we're capable of. No matter what story was written or what was done about us here in Youngstown to try to make us think or show us as the worst of the worst, we're the best of the best. I let people know Beyonce's, music manager and director is from Youngstown, Ohio. Derek Dixie, he went to Wilson High School. You know what I mean? That's a friend of mine. Greatness comes out of Youngstown. Warner Brothers, Good Humor, ice cream. I mean, I could go on and on about Youngstown and the greatness that comes out of it. I mean, our carousel from our park is in Brooklyn right now. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, great things coming. Karla took us there, to check it out, which I was so excited because I had just learned about that right before. But it just goes to show that when you present something to people and you show them that you can do it because you've done it, it changes their mindset. It's like, oh, okay, well, he did it. So, I think I could do it. Like, Karla producing this film. It's like, okay, some other filmmaker somewhere, it's like, oh, I seen what Karla did. I think I'm gonna give it a shot, So I think that's what it's about, changing the narrative in people's minds, starting to tell our own stories. And this documentary, this film definitely helps us be able to push that message and get that across. I think a lot of people have learned from it and changed their minds.
You know, I have to say that the two of you are very, very inspiring. And I'm starting to feel a little like, oh my goodness, our time is almost up. But I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I do have one more quick question for Karla. You know, you talked about beignets of people's lives. And I noticed that in the film, you had incorporated, I think, were home videos. Were these actual home videos that you were able to get from the residents of Youngstown?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the thinking behind, like we got a bunch of different home movies donated to, well, actually they weren't donated, we did give some money out for those, but yeah, from people who lived in Youngstown. And it was really to show how these spaces inhabit these memories and these experiences that were incredibly meaningful for people, that people lived in these what we now look at as an abandoned space, and to show all the life that was once there, but then also later in the film to show new life and a new family who's now making newer memories. But it was really to kind of honor that past, and to show the diversity. I think a lot of people also don't realize how diverse Youngstown is. I mean, it's like roughly 50% Black, 50% white. And I think a lot of people outside of Youngstown don't even know that. So I really wanted to show especially the Black middle class families, you know, like that life and that was there and thriving in Youngstown. And so that's what those home movies were trying to show. And yes, they were real.
Yeah, you did a really good job. Listen, I was told that our time is officially up, and I want to thank both of you for participating in this. I am so honored. There's some messages in the well done messages, and all these kudos are in the chat box. We thank you, thank you, thank you. We wish you luck. And Karla, I'm coming to New York to visit my son in December. I'm gonna see if I can find that carousel, Julius.
Yeah, James Carousel in Dumbo. Yeah.
Okay, then. Thank you so much, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for
Bye-bye.
watching. Thank you for having us.